On a tropical beach, metal pieces of plane started appearing on the shore. Swimmers also noticed big floating objects farther out. Local swimmers decided to go out and take a look, and they found 3 bodies, who were later identified as butlers of the family on the plane that crashed. Although the butlers' bodies were found, they did not find the families. After days of searching, nothing was found. On the mainland, rumors were going around about what had happened to the family. No one knew if they were alive, and if they were, what would they do, and where would they go? Welcome to the Stranded Podcast miniseries. This series was written and read by Matt Spear. Episode 1, The Crash. I sat in my chair on my private jet on the way to Paris with my wife and 2 children. My name is Walter, and I am 58 years old. I met my wife Jo 24 years ago, and we had 2 children, Simon, who was 11, and Claire, who was 15, and they have grown up even more fancier and richer than I did. My father owned a large, profitable business, and when he died, I inherited billions of dollars. My father was very passionate about teaching me his life skills. He would always be teaching me things like insurance and financing. He would ask me trivia questions and reward me when I got them right. He wanted to make sure I would be set for life with the wealth and skill. Even before he died, I was living in a huge mansion surrounded by butlers. Now, I live in an even bigger mansion with even more butlers. A few weeks ago, my wife suggested we take a trip to Paris, and I agreed because it sounded lovely seeing as I left to travel. As I sat in my chair, reading the newspaper, I heard Claire moan in frustration. I looked towards her and saw that she was slamming her phone on the ground in frustration, saying that the phone takes too long to load. Don't worry. If the phone takes too long to load, then we can get a new one in Paris, I told her. She stopped screaming and agreed. I was glad she was happy. I do not like to see Claire unhappy. I want my daughter to have the best life possible. I want to make sure she will always be happy. I resumed reading my paper, but when I held it up, the time on my designer watch caught my eye. It was lunchtime, which would explain why I was so hungry. I looked at my butler. I am hungry. Go get me a shrimp platter, I demanded. My butler came back 5 minutes later with cold shrimp and glacier ice with 3 different sauce dishes in the center of a crystal serving bowl with fresh clover garnishes on top, with the entire thing covered with large slices of truffle and some of the oldest, most expensive caviar on the planet. I looked at the plate, disgusted. There are too many garnishes on it. There can only be 4, not 5. Go fix it. I gestured at the garnish. My butler took the dish back to the kitchen and returned a few minutes later with only 4 garnishes. Much better. Suddenly, Simon asked my butler for his own platter. Not yet. If you want one, then tell me where the finest red shrimp in the world can be bought, I told him. Antarctica? He said, sounding unsure of himself. I sighed. No, that is wrong. You need to learn these things because they will be very important for you later in life. You may not have a shrimp platter, but you may have something else. I screamed at the butler not to get him a shrimp platter. Simon looked at the floor, upset. Why does he not take the responsibility to learn these things? One day he's going to inherit my money and my business, and I need to make sure he is ready. If he spends all of his days reading graphic novels and not caring about the future, his future will not be set. I am very concerned for him, and I want to make sure he will learn. Please, Dad, I really want one, Simon pleaded. Quiet, I told him. You are going to wake your mother. It is rude for a man to disrupt a lady's sleep. Out of nowhere, there was a big bump on the plane, and my shrimp platter fell to the ground. I told you I did not want any turbulence, I yelled at the butler piloting the plane. Then I resumed reading my newspaper, but noticed Claire walking towards the pile of shrimp on the ground, not realizing it was there. Stop, you're going to hurt yourself, I told her, but she did not hear me. I looked at my butler. Help her before she falls, I exclaimed to him. The butler stopped in her path, just as she was about to step on the glass. That was close. Be careful. Don't do stuff like that. You know how much I worry about your safety, I said to Claire. At that moment, there was an even bigger bump than the last, and the altitude mask dropped from the panel above. An alarm went off that made my ears rattle. What is going on? I screamed at my butler. There was no answer. I walked to the cockpit, and the pilot was not there. Go pilot the plane this instant, Joe demanded from the other room. I looked in her direction and saw the butlers jumping out of the plane with parachutes. I was so angry, my stomach churned. I did not pay them for this. Suddenly, the plane started to fall from the sky and crash. I sat down in my seat, not knowing what to do. I never needed to do anything before. Normally, I would ask my butlers, but they jumped out of the plane with the parachutes. That's it. We can use the parachutes. I told my family to get ready to jump out of the plane. I went to get the parachutes, but there were none there. My horrible butlers must have taken them. My children ran up to me, asking what we were going to do. I started thinking as hard as I could. Normally, I would have my butlers do the thinking for me. The plane started falling closer to the ground. Time was running out. It's okay. Sit down and do not worry. I'll get us out of this. I promise, I told my kids. I ran into the cockpit, hoping I still remembered how to fly a plane. Jo came running in. I can help. The kids are fine, she suggested. No, stay away. I'll handle this, I told her, and she ran into the lounge to help the children. When my father was still alive, he took me on a jet plane tour over Hawaii. He really wanted to teach me how to fly, even though I did not have any interest. However, my father made enforcement and forced me to pay attention and learn how to fly. He made me practice over and over and over again. He made me spend almost all of my free time learning how to fly. I sat in the cockpit thinking of that day in Hawaii and thinking of everything I learned. I remember that the wheel worked just like a car's and that most of the buttons were just for passenger information. I looked outside the windshield and saw we were heading straight for jagged, pointy rocks. I turned the wheel of the plane and we went sliding over the rocks. I was trying to get us up ahead, where there was deep water, and would break our impact, causing us to not crash and explode. The plane was slowly falling towards the water. We were still above the rocks. We don't have enough space. We needed to pull up. I tilted the wheel, but the engine had taken too much damage, and we went down even more. My hands started sweating against the wheel. We were going to crash. Brace for impact! I yelled at my family. The rocks were so close, I could see the individual cracks between them. Then there was this horrible scraping noise coming from the bottom of the plane as the rocks scraped against it. I ran into the other room, grabbed my wife and children, bracing for death. I could smell the fuel from my father's plane. I looked up and saw a bright light all around me. A figure was walking towards me from the distance. As the figure got closer, he turned out to be my father. He reached out his hand towards me. Walter, take my hand, Walter, he said to me. I grabbed it, and I got the feeling of being cuddled in my father's warm arms. I opened my mouth to ask him how he was here. When I did, my mouth got very full. I could taste the saltiness of my favorite drink he would always give me when I was younger. I could hear the liquid being poured. But then, everything disappeared, and there was nothing but darkness. Is this the end of Walter, or the start of a new journey? Find out next time in the Stranded podcast series. Thank you for listening.